All right, it's about 2:05, so we can go ahead and get started. My name is Alex Attinson. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Awards a Redesign panel. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. This event is going to work a little differently than some of the other events we do here at Foothold. For one, it's mostly going to be a panel. We're going to mostly be talking to you. And so to get the best experience, the best thing to do is actually to hover over the window where you can see us speaking, and click the expand button at the top right to go to the full screen view. It's going to make WebEx and our faces take up your whole screen, and that way you can sit back and enjoy the session. The other important thing is that we really want to encourage your participation in this event. We have a pretty large group scheduled to join us. So to keep things manageable, during the event, if you could use the chat feature and direct it to the panelists or to the host, direct your questions. I'll be happy to read them and present them to the group. And then if we have time afterwards, we'll do an open Q&A. We'd still like you to sort of raise your hand by using the chat feature and say that you have a question. But then if we have the opportunity to, we will unmute you to get started. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our CEO, Marlo Greenberg, who is going to kick things off. Looks like Marlo may be muted. Hold on, give me a second. Marlo, is that better?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the Foothold Usability Task Force user interface presentation. The Usability Task Force is the team here at Foothold has been responsible for developing this new interface. Their acronym UTF is something you may hear quite a bit today. As many of you know, your current graphical interface with awards has been around, basically unchanged since forever, since the beginning of the company in 2000. Over the years, we have spent almost all our resources and time developing new functionality, keeping up with regulatory changes, and simultaneously generally getting feedback that the interface is easy to use and easy to train on, so it never became much of a focus for us over time. And all that is fine and true, and yet it is time, we think, to freshen things up a little bit and bring some more new technology to the way you all interact with awards. The new interface you're about to see is the product of years of research, literally, and work on the part of the Usability Task Force here at Foothold, and I'm really proud of the work they have done. They've really put their noses to the grindstone, as it were, and been working hard at this. They've held countless meetings, met with experts in the field of software usability, spoken to clients and partners, and generally left no stone unturned, and I'm sure you're going to like what you see in here today. This presentation, as Alex mentioned, is going to be done in a panel format by 5 members of the UTF team: Alex, Laura, Dan, Corey, and Tanya. And it's being done in the style of a panel interview where Alex is going to ask questions initially and panelists are going to respond. And as he mentioned, we want your input, but because there are so many of you, we're not going to just have an open phone line because all the sirens and dogs in the background are going to make it difficult to hear. So please make liberal use of your chat box, ask your questions there, and we'll get to as many of them as we can during the Q&A portion. And lastly, please don't feel like this is the first and last time you're going to get to see this and ask questions about the new interface. This is designed to be a slow process. We're going to be rolling this out over a long period of time in order to give everyone a chance to acclimate themselves to the new interface, ask questions, get used to using it, and avoid the general sense that things are changing faster than you or your staff are ready for. So this is just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg, as it were. And so to start us off, I'm going to pass it back to Alex. Alex?
Thank you, Marlo. So I think the best thing to do is to maybe introduce the team so you guys know who's on the panel. So my name is Alex Attinson. I'm a member of the UTF. We're all members of the UTF, but I'm also a member of the QA team here at Foothold. We also have Corey Schomer, who is one of our programmers. We have Dan Heimerle, who is on our sales team. We have Laura Marshall, who is one of our senior project managers. And we have Tanya Karashi, who is also on the QA team. So to get things started, I think that it would be good to have a question for Laura. So Laura, since you are one of the founding members of the ETF, maybe you can give us a little background about where the UTF came from, what the initial goals were, and where it started from.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alex. So as Marla mentioned, this team and this effort has been in play for a long time. The team was actually formed back in 2008 when Marlo asked a handful of us, each from different divisions at the company, to come together and form a team to address usability issues in awards. And at that time, the final deliverables were really totally undefined at the onset. But we knew we wanted to instigate change and improvement in two general areas. One being the look and feel, sort of a cosmetic overhaul of awards, and second being around navigation, consistency of use, improved workflows, and just a more efficient user experience. And as soon as this team was formed and announced internally, we started to receive literally like a flood of input from within the company. Issues, topics, suggestions, problems, ideas, all that fell under this sort of larger umbrella of usability. And all of these requests, let's say, were primarily informed by client input and experience, whether they came in through help desk tickets, conversations with clients, training feedback, sales prospects feedback, and all of this was fundamental in shaping our direction and our priorities. And within 6 months, the team had started to try to put together the pieces of a proposal to revamp the existing opening menu, which is, of course, just central to navigation, and from there, revision the possibilities of how users can navigate awards, taking account of common workflows that aren't so smooth in today's version of the app. And for the team, this quickly became the biggest win. It really eclipsed everything else. Yes, we absolutely wanted awards to look nicer, be more appealing to the eye, but more fundamental, more important, was that we wanted an improved navigational experience for the user. We wanted the user to be able to move around more intuitively, complete their work more efficiently, and have a home screen that was more personalized to their individual roles and responsibilities. And so this goal, as I said, was really the one to eclipse all others and has driven the work that we have done. And the new look and feel, that cosmetic overhaul, is an integral component of that overarching effort that really focuses on navigation. So over the next couple of years, we continue to review and analyze all of these ideas, suggestions, and materials that were continually passed our way. And I'm here to tell you there were a lot of them. People at Foothold have a lot of suggestions, a lot of good suggestions. Our clients can say the same about. So we really were deluged, and we're trying to make sense of kind of what the scope of our project was and how we were going to move forward. And at some point, a couple years in, we were really able to make a shift to not just talking about and dissecting the problems, but really developing comprehensive solutions to all of those problems, or most of those problems, let's say. And we kept plugging away at what we were called our opening menu revamp. That's just so central to the whole vision of this project. And really addressing these various navigational workflows that we wanted integrated into awards. And we, step by step, started to develop a solid framework for this project moving forward. I want to mention, too, that around this time, a couple of years in, the importance of making awards more user-friendly and compatible across devices started to rise in importance as tablets and phones were becoming increasingly integral tools for our end users. And this is a trend that continues today, and also became a really important component in our design and the whole forward movement of this project. So we started to make headway, started to articulate a vision of how we wanted to redesign awards. But at the same time, as we were making that movement forward, we also started to push up against our own limits. And while as a team, I'd say, really there's no sort of group of people collectively that could know awards better. But at the same time, we were well aware that, there's a whole usability field out there, chock full of research and metrics about what works and what doesn't, what design elements create what kinds of efficiencies, research on user behavior. And we needed to tap into that body of knowledge in order to make smart decisions. So we started to look outside of the company and look into design and usability companies and experts that could help us bring the project to the next level. And in 2012, we hired a California-based product design company called Zerb and engaged them in an intensive 4-month design process where we came to the table with all the work we had done and sort of added to it Zerb's design and usability expertise. And we were really able to turn our vision and our proposals into actual wireframes and prototypes for a new awards. And Alex, I think a little bit later, is going to show you some of that work. We're going to actually take a look at those. It was a really, really exciting process and an interesting process to be a part of. So, excuse me, since then, since 2013, the project's been on deck for development, and this team has been doing the required preliminary work for the development, including spec writing, designing additional wireframes, and doing a lot of structural programming work in the background to set the groundwork for the changes that we want to make. We've also redesigned and deployed new login and logout screens, and we started to standardize indices, still in sort of the awards classic or old awards, but across the application. And then since the beginning of 2015, the pace of our work has really picked up. And this team, along with some additional programming and QA resources, is really in full swing to get these changes developed and out the door to our users. And the vast majority of our work to date has been related to things that end users don't yet see. And this is really about to change. And over the course of the next year, users are going to start to see and experience the numerous benefits that this effort, this long-term effort, is going to bring forth. So we're really excited about what we're doing, what we've accomplished, and most importantly, what's to come. And this meeting today, which was really an invitation to our most committed and experienced users to learn about the scope and scale and the intentions of this project, is an important milestone for us. It's part of our rollout plan, and we consider it a key element, and the ongoing communication with you and the rest of our clients is really important to the successful implementation of this project. So that's where we are today.
Thank you, Laura. That's great. So Dan, I think the next question would be good for you to answer initially. You're kind of on the front line with agencies that aren't yet awards users or Foothold clients. So what have you learned from them, and what changes do you think we can make and will make as part of this project that'll put us at the front of the market?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Knows that awards is constantly being developed. We've had new features being added over the years, meaningful use, health information exchange, modernizing the software to comply with the DSM-5, ICD-10 changes. Is very up-to-date, very modern. We have a lot of new features that are coming up down the road that are even just as exciting, I think. So with that in mind, we really just wanted to create an interface that really accurately, represented, the cutting-edge technology that we have, as well as that's coming out in the future. With that being said, we also realize that awards is very simple, very easy to use. We've heard lots of feedback from current clients and prospective clients that they like that. So keeping that in mind, we've preserved, I think, some of that usability and some of that familiarity, so I think existing clients will find it very easy to adapt to.
And do you think first impressions are important with EHRs?
Sure. It's, the people, have, an initial, reaction and impression, when they first see awards.
Definitely. So this will probably help us in terms of showing all of the benefits of awards and getting past the look and feel and improving that. So Laura mentioned Zerb, and Zerb is really important to the usability task force because the project we did with them was all-encompassing. They took us through numerous stages of kind of exploration and looking at awards, looking at our clients, and looking at Foothold. And we ended up with something that was really great in terms of a deliverable and some next steps for our team. So I want to actually take us through what those next steps are and what the project looked like. So it's going to be a little bit of a shift in your WebEx window now. I'm actually going to share my screen, and you're going to see a little slide deck of the work we did with Zurb. So here we go. Everyone should now see a title slide for the Zurb project. You may also want to click the expand button, which will make this full screen on your computer. So the first phase of our project with Zurb was kind of what we called, and they called, the opportunity phase. We looked for core areas of focus for the project, big ideas, tentpole ideas that were going to be consistent themes and really guide us to finding a singular vision for awards, inclusive of making things that worked in the current version work in the future, taking best practices for user experience and applying them forward. So the first kind of theme is, and you'll kind of see these sketches, it's something that Zurb does and is pretty unique as a design company. They like sketching because it's quick and you can just throw away kind of a piece of paper if you don't like the sketch. You're not putting a lot of work into making a very structured drawing on the computer or in Photoshop. So just an example of a global pattern, and this is just as one of many, is global search, and this is something you'll start to see more and more of in awards. In a lot of different products that we work with as users of not just awards, but in different applications. Search is really important as a navigation tool now. We don't click around for something, we just type what we want and then it shows up. Another thing is consistent interactions. We want you to feel familiar with every page in awards, even if you haven't been to that page yet. So you'll start to see a fixed navigation bar that goes at the top of your awards application that'll let you get to the places you want to go in awards quickly, but also in a way that's going to become very familiar to you. Another big thing is how your data is displayed. You use awards as a database. We want to make sure we're displaying your information in an inviting way, but in an efficient way, in a manner where you're going to be able to work with your data, be able to see everything that's important to you, and give you some ability to kind of customize what you see on the screen. And then last, we want to really make awards feel less like a website and more like an application. Something that whether you open it on your phone, your tablet, or your computer, it's going to work consistently and display responsively to your screen. So this was the starting point. Everything was very fluid at this point in the project. We were just exploring, the direction we wanted to go in terms of, this new awards. The next phase is what I'm going to refer to as like the conceptual phase. Where these sketches are going to look very familiar to the kind of the opportunity sketches from the last slide. But at this point, we're starting to drill down and explore what the pages and awards are going to look like in the future. What's the ideal workflow going to be? Obviously, you can't just take what we have in awards and make it something completely different without some sort of transformation. But we wanted to have an idea of what our endpoint is so that, as Laura mentioned, a lot of the work we're going to do in between is going to get us to that vision and evolve the application to that vision. So I would keep this sketch in mind because we're going to see something a little later that's going to look familiar to it. This is kind of like the very early manifestation of it. But for example, here we're looking at different ways to navigate around the application. Then we're looking at what's the best possible home screen in awards. What does it look like? What information does it have on it? So we have this idea of a home screen as a dashboard. And then another thing we did that was really important is exploration of workflow. How do we cut down clicks, or how do we make it more efficient and more logical to get the rewards? Are people going to use search? Are they going to have breadcrumbs? Recent activity? Can they set bookmarks or favorites? There's so many different pages in awards, and there's so much functionality we don't want to necessarily say what we have now is the best possible way of doing it, but we want to know, ideally, from a user experience perspective, what would be the best way of letting a user navigate around a behavioral health care-focused EHR like awards. So then past the concept phase, we really started to solidify things and get to a point where we could iterate very quickly, where Zurb would give us something and say, hey, how do you like this? And then we could give them feedback. And we had a period of a few weeks, and other people on the team could correct me if I'm wrong, but where we really went back and forth with them on almost a daily basis in terms of refining these wireframes. And now you can see we've kind of moved from those sketches to, and these are called hi-fi wireframes. And this isn't a web page, but it's image that Zurb makes, and they actually allow you to navigate through it. So we started to get a feel, for what the workflow would be and what it would feel like. And because there's no real coding going on here, it let us change things very quickly. So Zurb wouldn't necessarily send us one thing and it wouldn't be the final product. We knew that we could make changes and update it. So this is an example of that dashboard sketch that we saw before, but now it looks more like what a final product might be. For example, this is similar to that navigation sketch where we're letting you move through a different feature and awards. And then they added color, so this is called a layout. And this is what maybe the face sheet or the client portal might look like in the future. And they colorized it, and we were able to play around with that and make it an inviting look and feel. And this is, for example, what progress notes might look like, or a feature that uses an index. And then that took us to the prototype phase and beyond as well. Because our goal with this wasn't just to get a bunch of coded screens, because that doesn't make an application, because as we all know, most of what awards does is going on in the background. So we wanted to get it to a place where we could start to implement their prototype into our application in a way that was practical. So this is a prototype of a dashboard or a home screen. This is a prototype of the progress notes feature. But to me, this last one is the most important one. This is our style guide. So Zurb gave us advice based on our feedback of what to do in many different situations, so that when our programmers like Corey jump in here, they're going to be able to take this advice and apply it to any page in awards. And that's really the jumping off point for this project, which is to get it coded and get it working with the live application. All right, so we're going to jump out of the screen sharing mode and back to kind of the video panel, because I have a question for Corey. So Corey, as the programmer on the usability task force, what considerations did you make to take awards beyond the wireframes and into the next version of awards?
Well, we had to build the application stack by looking at the best supported mobile-first code frameworks, and also new features with HTML5 capable browsers. Those were big considerations that were taken in. The underlying structure of the application will change, leading to not just improving the look, but also the overall responsiveness of the app. Awards will now feel, as was stated earlier, that it will be more like an app instead of a website look and feel. Improvements will lead to less bandwidth use, enhancements for mobile use, HTML5 features for better workflow, and more. And those are some of the considerations that we took into place. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Corey. Just as a reminder for the group, if you have a question, open the chat dialog and type it there. Just make sure it's directed at either the host or the panelists, and I'll be able to ask it of the panel. We really would love for this to be an interactive event where we're getting a lot of questions from everyone. All right, so we kind of talked about, Laura talked about the history of the project. Dan talked about, kind of the feedback. We got Corey. I took us through the project we did with Zerb, and Corey discussed a little bit about where we're going in the future. So I think this would actually be a good time to pass it over to Tanya and take a look at some of the work we've actually done on a working awards database and what this is going to look like.
Thanks, Alex. Just waiting for, do you guys see my screen now? Hear me? Okay. So I'm just going to hop in first and show you what we've deployed so far. We've taken some of the wireframes that Alex walked us through, and we started taking the indexes and putting that look and feel of the new index to some of our modules. Well, the first one we did was employers, and this is live now, so this is the one I'm going to start with. So you can see this looks pretty different from the indexes that we have had. It has the new look and feel that we worked on with Zerb, but it's also familiar in that each record has a line in the index. We have our clickable headers, we have our counts and our arrows, but the usability here has some new features. And one exciting new feature is this global search. So I'll speak to that in just a second, but what I want to show you here is each record still has a line with a radio button, and to do the radio button edit, radio button print, this is called the action bar. So whereas before each row had these icons in that, we've moved them up to an action bar. This is going to set us up for changing these radio buttons to checkboxes, and when they become checkboxes, you'll be able to click on multiple records to allow you to do a batch edit or a batch view and print, a batch delete, instead of going into each record at a time. So this is one step that might seem small at first, but it's going to set us up for a bigger change later that it's going to be a great win. The search box is also new, and it is something that we'll be implementing on indexes going forward as we share this new design with them. This allows me to search index contents. So if I use Jack's name here, it's going to search all columns for a company name containing Jack or contacts containing Jack. And I can decide to change my filter here for the search and just filter by one or all. And if I am done with that search, I can just click it off. So this is the new look and feel. Again, we still have one button to add new. I can still go into a record by clicking on it to go into data entry mode. This itself is different as well. We do have this particular module has sub-indexes and even subforms if turned on. So we have our data entry at the top, but we also have a sub-index of contacts or positions available in the case of employers. And again, we see this search box here if we were going to search. If we had maybe 50 contacts at one company, we wanted to just do a quick search for Jack, we could. And these work similar to the parent index, and then I can click to edit. Again, we're seeing radio buttons here, but in the future, that's setting us up to change them over to checkboxes and allow us to enter a path of batch edit. So that is live today, and this is going to be the new index format that we will be rolling out over the next few months. You'll see this pop up in more places as our monthly deployments roll out. And now I'll show you what we probably all came here for, and that is the new opening menu that we'll be deploying later this summer. Let me move this over. Okay, so this is the sneak peek that you got in the email invitation to this webinar. And this is the first phase of the opening menu and really the awards redesign that will be 2 years in the making, or plus 2 years in the making once it's all said and done. So this is step one, and it has some familiar features in it. You know, our current opening menu has the 3 sections with the module buttons within each section. Here we have sections of buttons, but our buckets are over at the left-hand menu kind of determines what set of buckets I see. So in my chart section, I still see my chart record modules. I'm still seeing employment, entitlements, housing, medical. And for this first step, clicking on some of these buttons or all of these buttons will return me to a menu page that I know. It's going to be taking you to the classic view. So if I go into services, I'm still going to see my services menu. This is not going to be, you know, a total redesign this first step. I can still go into progress notes, select the client, see my index, and continue to write a progress note. So what is changing slightly is some of the locations. We are introducing a module section called Census, and that's going to have all of our ins and outs for our clients, our profile, and then if you are using the transfers, they'll be there too. So there is just going to be a quick learn to know where to go for these guys, you know, for the census modules. But charts will pretty much be the same as will the administration modules. What we are also introducing is this new top bar, which has some components of that general section that we see at the top of our current opening menu. We see the calendar, we see messages, we see Foothold Connect. And so these will all open the existing calendar, the existing messages, and the existing Foothold Connect. We'll also be moving your company's logo, your agency's logo over to the right. And the username will now be, it'll have a drop-down underneath it, which will allow them to do some of the things that are currently in the organizer. So we'll do see attendance there, e-sign, password, user settings, and the option to log out. We also are moving help to the upper right, so we are paring it down to just getting help and submitting a help desk ticket. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on messages to show you that it is still going to be the messages that you know, as will any of these, you know, buttons that you're going into. And if I go into help, I'll still be able to open help in a new window on top of awards. It's just going to be a matter of seeing, hey, calendar's up here. And so the last thing I wanted to show you on this particular page is client lookup. That's one thing that's not yet been addressed. And client lookup is going to be moved up to this top search bar so that if I click on it, I'll see all of my client lookup fields. And I'll go ahead and put in a first name. So I'll just put in Hank, click search, and we'll get the same customer lookup or client lookup results page that we're familiar with, and we know where to go from here, right? You will notice that as I was clicking through, the top bar is static. So again, I'll always have an opportunity to get help. I'll always have an opportunity to log out. I'll always have an opportunity to return home. But that will be giving us a more, something familiar on every page, as Alex was stating. So this is phase one of the redesign of the navigation. And this next phase after this, the final product will have the new redesigned homepage, which will look slightly different than this, a program tab, a client portal, and a reports portal. So we're starting with the program portal right now, and this ultimately will change to a program portal. And then we're going to be building out a client-centric view and a homepage that will have customizable dashlets and things like that.
That's actually a good jumping off point because we have our first question. And just as a reminder, you can submit questions using the chat feature. Our client, Bill Hebner at Baltic Street, would like to know if there's been any consideration of custom buckets for the opening menu. So since you mentioned customization, and anyone in the group can answer, what have we done to kind of consider and address that?
Yeah, let me start to speak to that. So, as Tanya mentioned, this is phase one of the opening menu, and we anticipate it being deployed in 3 phases, although there's lots of support work and sort of relevant pieces that will be deployed in between those 3 phases. The sort of ultimate end product here, which will be no longer what we call an opening menu, but our home screen, or any individual user's home screen, will as things are today, be informed by permissions and what people can see, but B, there's going to be this whole center part here where we actually see these chart activities these chart activities options modules will actually, when you open, will be a configurable home screen with a variety of choices that a user can make around what they're going to see there, whether that be most recent progress notes written of clients on their caseload, recent messages, certain reports that you use most frequently and want a link to them there. The details of the variety of options that will be there have certainly been talked about, but not finalized at this point. But even the label moving away from opening menu to home is sort of indicative of where this is heading. And we certainly, I think one of the things as this company has grown and our user base has grown and clients new and old just use awards in greater depth and across so many modules of the application, that there are so many users. For sure, a caseworker, quote unquote, is our primary end user, but there are just so many other kinds of users, whether they're in the fiscal department, whether they just do intake, whether they're really just a supervisor and oversee and look at reports, any number of kind of views that really one home screen just doesn't make sense for, because there are different things that people use on a daily basis and which are priorities to them and that they want information about the moment they log into their database. So I hope that addresses sort of the buckets question. I don't know whether anyone else on my team wants to add anything to that.
I would just say I think we hope that by changing the way navigation is done, making things client-centric instead of activity-centric, like I think the screen we're looking at now, which is more of a facelift perhaps on the opening menu, is probably activity-centric. We hope by making things client-centric that by drilling into the client's record, what you want is going to be already there. And I think the search feature that Tanya showed, and Tanya, maybe you can just click on that search box. We're opening up access to all of the client records from any page in Awards now through that search box once that menu bar is in place. And we think that will make things a lot easier for you and maybe reduce the need to customize or label. But having said that, there's components that we discussed for this dashboard vision as the home screen, where maybe you'd be able to pin different features, or you'd have different reports, stuck there, so that when you log in, that was the first thing that comes to your attention. So it's definitely something we've thought about. We just want to do it in a way that works for everyone.
And if I may, while this view of the search is open here, just tell you a little bit more about what Tanya alluded to here. So this also, when this gets deployed, this first phase is sort of is a hybrid really of where we're headed with this new search feature, this new client lookup. Today, what we've done here, or in this first phase, what you're going to see here is, you're really looking at client lookup just sort of in a little bit of a different view here, right? I'm still seeing all my same fields that I see when I go on client lookup. It's handy. It's on the top of every page. I can use it wherever I want. Ultimately, though, there will still be an advanced search feature LinkedIn right here where you can really hone in on particular fields, but it will also just be that the standard use of it will just be an open text box where you can enter a partial SSN, a part of somebody's last name, and more in the line of a Google search, and have that just whatever portion of whatever set of information that you enter there, it will do the search for you. So sort of depending on what you need, whether or not there are reasons that you might want to do an advanced search, and other reasons that you want to kind of do just a quick and dirty. Let me enter what I know and see what I get, and that too just a real win, I think, in this new version of awards.
Great. We have another question from Kim Nguyen. They'd like to know if we could elaborate a little more on the workflow process changes that are coming. I think that can go to anyone in the group. Maybe Laura or Tanya. You'd like to say something to that?
For the first phase, the workflow for this first opening menu phase, it won't be changing that much. It's just, again, knowing where to do that initial click from, okay, now I have to click on census to go to intake. So the learning of the workflow isn't really going to be disrupted too much, because we're still going to be doing all of the data entry and all running our report builders and everything like that in the classic view. So not too much yet. And then as we continue, into the next year, we will be, offering, documentation and webinars and support for anything like that. But it will be using, the new look and feel and then the familiar awards for a while. There will be a combination. So I don't know if that answers your question just yet, but there will be at the end of the day, there will be a different workflow in the client view, and then I could say I'm working with client John Doe, open his face sheet, and just to be able to do anything from there, including write progress notes, look at his plans, and look at his entitlements without having to go into a module at a time in order to accomplish that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just kind of just highlight those last couple of points that Tanya made there, because for me, I think it's one of the most exciting features to come about this is this client portal or client view, which doesn't exist today in awards, right? Awards is very program centric and very module centric, and that certainly works for certain kinds of things that one is trying to get done. But there isn't a place today to go in awards and say, I'm working with John Doe, and I need to see everything about John Doe, which you can do pretty much actually under the client history report today, but it's a report. I'm not interacting with the data. I'm not updating his record. This client portal will allow me to search and find somebody and have his entire chart available to me and to update pieces and portions of it right there on the same screen. So that census charts and administration in not on the opening menu, but in our client portal or client view in this new version of awards could be, if I had looked up a client, again, sort of the listing of all the modules today and submodules that make up his record. So I could click on my progress notes link there and open up and write a new progress note right there. I might want to update a medication. Oh, I notice he has some charting event, and I'm working on the same screen and I'm interacting with his record in entirety, rather than having to do more of that, hub and spoke movement where I have to drill down into a different module to find the page or the interface that I'm looking to get to. So I think that is really going to be just a terrific win for the majority of users of awards, and it's just something that for whatever reason isn't there today. So we're really looking forward to getting that piece out there for everybody to use.
Excellent. I think that answers it perfectly. So Laura, a question for you. What's the rollout plan to get us from where we are with awards today to this new version of the app?
All right, that's a great question. So somebody, either Tanya or you, I think, had mentioned, thrown out there 2 years, and that's really the time frame that we are looking at, and I would say it's 2015 and 2016. And, you know, with all of our development work, there are so many factors that affect the progression of the work and all kinds of considerations around how things go, what issues we run into. But what we are aiming for is a 2-year effort around development and deployment. But what I do want to note here is that, you know, I think the time, the effect on the user, the time that the user is really going to feel that is really only a year. We're already 6 months in. We've done a tremendous amount of development work where this is concerned since January of this year, and really has little impact on the user, right? Most people are, you know, moving on, not really aware, maybe a little thing here and there, an index that they've noticed, or if they happen to use employment a lot, they're seeing that there. But there's nothing of note. Come August, when we're going to deploy what Tanya showed you there, that first phase of the opening menu, users are going to start to feel it and see it. And then over the course of the next year, I think they'll be feeling it sort of month after month and seeing these changes as we deploy things in phases. By next summer, sort of a year from this August, we'll be pretty much there, hopefully, from the client side of things. Our work will not be done. There are modules that we know are not going to get attention until much later in the project. There are, you know, certain kinds of background optimization and that kind of thing that won't happen until later, much later in the process, when most of the pieces are put together. And so 2 years, but really we'd say a year on the user front. And we're talking about the opening menu being deployed in pretty much in 3 phases. And then along with that, you know, we're going to work on, you know, changing over module by module, putting things from old or classic into new or today's awards. And, you know, it's somewhat like that, and there's a deliberation process around which modules come first. You know, for instance, we did employers because we wanted to do a module where we didn't have a lot of people touching it. But as we move forward, we want to do things where people are most active so that they start to feel consistency across the database as quickly as possible. There are certain modules that are going to be easier and others that are going to be more complex. And, you know, again, just so many factors that are going to push and pull around what gets done first. But it's also not just so simple as changing modules, turning them in, right? There's features and functions that, for instance, like this new client portal that we're talking about, that don't exist in awards today. So sort of what point in the process do we build that? How many pieces of classic awards need to be converted into new awards before it makes sense to go forth with that sort of new feature or new workflow that we can introduce? So a lot of factors to consider. We have our work mapped out in a pretty detailed manner to get us through the end of 2015. And then, you know, as the months go by, as we approach that, we continue to rework our plan depending on, you know, again, just how close we are to where we thought we would be, what other considerations have come up, what our resources look like, what difficulties we've run into that, and how quickly we can resolve them. So there's a lot there, a lot of moving pieces. But like I said, we anticipate the client experience of this transition to be about a year from this summer to next, give or take. That's kind of where we are at the moment with it. I will add too that, I mean, this with the deployment of this new home screen in August, and even before then, because we're further along in the background than you're seeing on the front. This project is, of course, a top priority in our development queue. We do have to pay attention to other things around certain regulations and other client needs that are just extremely pressing, but this trumps many other things so that we can get it out the door so that we have sort of the most benefit and the smoothest experience for the user moving forward.
Thanks, Laura. So, Tanya, I think this would be a good question for you. This is a pretty unique project for us. So what are the plans to get this out to everyone, all of our users, without disrupting their day-to-day experience?
Well, the first thing we're really going to try to do is prepare users for this, let them know it's coming. It's a pretty intense campaign using our usual channels, footnotes, opening menu notifications, and have a series of webinars that people can join when the new deployments come. We don't want anybody to be surprised by this. And we want that, this first phase to be a welcome change and that it just becomes familiar to them. They'll know what to do just like they've always done. We'll also be building in some guided tours for the initial logins of the new features that users have the option of taking when they log in. That's something we haven't done in the past, but, other websites do them and applications do them. So maybe expect a guided tour just when you first log in to kind of show you on screen some of the new features along the way. We'll also be working to keep online help up to date as we go forward with these changes. Like I said, it may be awkward working with the two versions of the interface, but at the same time, this phased deployment is really going to give users a chance to get used to the new look and feel over time instead of keeping it on the shelf until it's all ready and then having everything be new overnight. So using the phased approach, we don't anticipate the need for any kind of real formal retraining of your users as long as they are, paying attention and logging in, doing their job as they are on a regular basis. It should be a pretty smooth transition.
Great. Thank you, Tanya. So I just want to encourage anyone who has any questions, comments, feedback for us, please let me know in the chat window, and we'll be happy to unmute you. We have a question from Michelle Meyer at JSCD. She's wondering if we're going to have any content on these features or these projects at the Expo. And I promise this wasn't a planted plug. Our Foothold Expo is on June 25th at the Kimmel Center at NYU here in New York City. Does anyone on the panel have any comment on that?
As far as I'm aware, we're not having sort of a session or anything like that on this. I imagine that part of Marlowe's talk that he gives at the beginning to welcome everybody and kind of talk about, sort of gives a state of the company, will include information about this, and again, just trying to get the word out there to various audiences. So I think it will be in that capacity, and I'm again probably referenced in certain sessions as relevant, but not as a topic in and of itself per se, where a session is concerned.
It will also be mentioned in a morning session that deals with our project forecast. So it will be mentioned. We probably won't outline it, the plan detailed, step by step, but you'll see what projects are coming down the pipeline, as we usually include in our footnotes, that pipeline section of what's to come. We're having a similar session around the projects to come, how we decide what's being deployed, and things like that. So there will be, again, it'll be addressed, but not have a dedicated session.
And I believe we'll also be making a recording of this session available at some point, probably through Awards Online Help. Again, if you want to register for the Expo, it's expo.footholdtechnology.com, and it's on June 25th. So I think that about wraps things up just as we get exactly to 3 o'clock. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today, for all the questions, and especially to the other members of the UTF. I really hope we were able to get across an idea of both where we came from with this project and where awards is going to be going in the future. If you have any questions, we'll hang out on the line for a little while. Otherwise, have a great afternoon, and we look forward to talking more about this in the future. All right. It looks like we have a question from Rochelle Carr at Federation. Rochelle, if you just hang on a second, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask. And thank you to everyone who's saying such nice things about what you guys saw today in the comments. It's really great to hear. Here you go, Rochelle.
Hi, Alex. I was wondering if there's going to be changes to the functionality of awards other than just like the navigation part of it. Like, for example, like in the HR module, will there be any upgrades to the module itself? Something like allowing more than one job title, more than one supervisor per staff person?
So I can speak to that. So, hi, Rochelle. So as a general rule, this project is not about building new functionality in awards outside of how it relates to new navigation. And it was one of the areas that I would certainly say in the early years of this team together that we really struggled with in terms of kind of where are the boundaries of the work that we're going to do. And so there are certain things that, for instance, there are certain things that will get resolved or go away as a result of sort of this new awards, and there are small cleanup things that we will be doing along the way that make sense to us as in relation to whatever sort of piece of the project that we're working on, where there may be obvious inconsistencies or, real limitations around sort of how some field or two fields interact, that we can kind of easily clean up while we're doing what we're doing. But in order to kind of make the scope of this project have some border, some edge, we're not, as a general rule, addressing new functionality with this. That said, customization projects are going to be ongoing while this is going on, and one of the things that we're really excited about, which we didn't really talk about, Corey alluded to it, but the customization will be easier moving forward because this project introduces a lot of consistency in the background as well that is just not there today, that should enable us to do a lot of the things that we want to do and do today, but do them more easily and more sort of universally and globally, make those kinds of fixes that make sense, to any field of that type or across all modules where you have that kind of, you can have that kind of interaction with the database. So, so I think basically my answer to your question is no, but it's gray. Because there's not a clear line there in many instances.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, I don't see any other questions. So if you guys do have any other feedback, I would certainly suggest speaking to your senior project manager, and they'll be able to pass that information on to us. Again, we really appreciate everyone's participation today, and